Good Saturday morning to you, and welcome to On the Mark with Mark Papa. Along with Mark Papa, I'm Gary Byron. Mark Papa is with Financial Resources Group located in Glastonbury. You can find him online at www.frplan.com. That's frplan.com. You can also, schedule a consultation with him. There's never any obligation, but I'm going to tell you something. You sit down and sit across from him from any duration of time, and you're going to learn something that is detrimental to your future. 860-657-8380. One more time. 860-657-8380. By the way, there's a replay of this show on his YouTube channel, which is at Mark, that's Mark with a K, Papa, P-A-P-P-A 5207. And you can also check out these episodes in chronological order, if you like, right on his website. Again, it's frplan.com. By the way, if you missed any of those points of contact, I will be repeating them throughout the show. Mark, good morning. Great to see you.
Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Oh, I'm not doing too bad. I'm just waiting for, big day tomorrow. I'm going to watch the show. Let me tell you something. For the first time that I can even remember, I'm coming across people who have no interest in watching the Super Bowl this year.
I can't believe you said that, because it's like I really don't have any skin in the game here. And
my team's not on it either.
And no offense, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about all the people losing money on these parlay bets on FanDuel, and these betting companies are making billions of dollars on that. I just want to see a really good game, and I definitely have a little bit of soft spot for Saquon Barkley.
You're a Giants fan? Or?
Yeah, Giants fan, and my son Andrew had his jersey for a while. So I'm rooting for, in a little bit, I guess I'm going to be a little bit biased towards Saquon, but it's also sacrilege for any Giants fan to like the Eagles. But you know what? Too much hate in the world. We got to just find some love, and let's just watch a good game and let the best team win.
I have never rooted for the Eagles in my life until tomorrow. I will be rooting for the Eagles as well. So.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Well, I just want a good game.
That's all. Yeah, and a fair game, too, because there's been some controversy with some of the calls.
Yeah, with one of those teams, by the way. We had a great show last week. I heard some positive feedback. It was only show number 2. You're onto something here. Why do you think these topics resonate so highly with the average person?
Well, Gary, I think most of it, this has been, just so you know, this is not new. I didn't create this. This has been in the works. They've been working on things like this. It's about 30 years old. Okay.
Really?
30 years.
Oh.
In fact, the gentleman who created this just retired recently, so he's semi-retired. And interesting enough, I'm one of 150 advisors that are actually trained to conduct what's called the full checklist review.
150 people where? In Connecticut?
150 advisors across the country. So I'm one of 150. I'm not aware of anyone else in Connecticut who is trained to do this, but I'm certainly looking for people willing to learn.
Will you train?
Oh, absolutely. The more people who learn this, the more people we can help, right? So I'd be more than willing to show other advisors. Of course, if they want to come on board with my firm, no problem. But I could take somebody from scratch in a year or two and really get them to master this. I would say if they worked hard enough, within 6 months they'd master this.
Really?
Yeah, and it wasn't easy to do, but it is the right thing to do. That's why we're focused on these kind of things.
Okay. Well, you want to get right into it.
Yeah. And I know we last left off, just for our listeners who didn't hear the last episode, we talked about filing your medical power of attorney electronically.
Right.
And you remember why would that be so important? Because, it's not something you can carry with you. However, if you always have it in a digital vault, secure digital vault, and you're traveling, you have your medical power of attorney on you. And you may recall, Gary, I said, what would happen if you didn't have your medical power of attorney with you and it's home in a lockbox and you're traveling in Arizona or California or Florida? How would your medical power of attorney get hold of that in order to make a medical decision for you if they really needed to? Could they rush into the lockbox and maybe, fax it down to the hospital? Or what kind of stress and unnecessary stress would that cause that person? Right.
An incredible amount. I don't even know if I'd want to be someone's power of attorney. I mean, you really need to know everything about that person and as far as what they want.
Yeah.
In that emergency.
And we're actually going to get into that today, because filing that medical power of attorney electronically again, or is super important, having that on you at all times, because if anyone needs to make that decision, if you're in control, the hospital's in control, who are they looking to benefit?
Oh, themselves.
Themselves. I mean, look, the doctors are there to care for you, but at the end of the day, you know what the hospitals. And remember, I mentioned whose lawyer's right. The hospital's version is the hospital's. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure you always have your medical power of attorney on hand, because anything can happen at any time.
Well, there's an old saying, and I learned this years ago. You tell me who's paying for the attorney, I'll tell you what the outcome is.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, or it's just like one of those studies that they do, right? You were in the legislature. Who wrote the study, and what's this lobbyist one again? Same thing. But here's the thing: I'm going to let everybody know that anybody who, I'm not saying that you need, because of this, you should become a client. But what we do is, for my clients, especially this year, for the people who haven't done it yet, I'm actually paying for the first year of the service. So anybody that came on board with us, or existing clients who are listening, I'm going to be offering you fill out this little pamphlet. You put your medications in there. You put in your pre-existing conditions, anything you want. And let's say somebody who was ambulatory to know, like going to get an ambulance or a doctor, and we will upload that to that digital vault. So this way, if they download your medical power of attorney at the hospital, right, because you can send it anywhere in the country, they will have your medications, and on the little card too, it tells you, okay, we can't treat him with that solution because he may have an adverse reaction to the drug listed on there. So couldn't that something in and of itself save your life?
Of course.
So what we're trying to do is, I want to make sure all my clients have this, so I pay for the first year on me. I have an account, okay?
Nice of you.
Yeah, thank you. So anybody, hopefully that resonates with you.
Very generous.
Yeah, and it's and it's a service that you just keep once a year you renew it, and we stay on top of it, and we make sure we go over these things so that it's accurate. So each year if something's changed, let's say you're no longer rovastatin or something, whatever drug. I think that's whatever that changes to another drug. You just update it once a year, just in our annual review.
Okay,
so it becomes part of a moving, living, breathing thing. Okay, just staying on top of things once a year. So you brought something up that said you wouldn't know whether or not you'd ever want to be somebody's medical power of attorney.
Well, the more I'm talking with you, initially I'm like, it's kind of an honor that the person thinks that highly of me. But the more I'm talking to you and you're describing it, I'm like, I don't know if I'll be able to make such life-depending decisions unless I truly spend hours and hours with the person going over every possible scenario. Mm-hmm. Anybody could say, well, pull the plug on me if, there's so many variables.
Yeah.
I don't want to make the wrong decision. It's a hell of a responsibility, Mark.
It's absolutely a massive responsibility. And think about the weight on your shoulders that you're not even anyone's power of attorney yet, and you're already stressed out about it. So let's think about that. So if there was a way, Gary, I can take that stress off your back and make it so that you can make a clear decision for that person when they can't, how great would that be?
That's invaluable. Sure. Yeah.
So that's exactly why we actually, as part of that electronic document, we also have another form called a Quality of Life Directive. So in the Quality of Life Directive, there's a bunch of different things where people can actually list what they want, okay, and how they want to be treated in the event of incapacity. So one of the main things is I ask people, they come in with their medical power of attorney. I said, oh, you're missing the other half of your medical power of attorney. They look at me like I'm crazy. And I'll say to them, well, that's okay because it's not a legal document, Gary. This was a document that was created by the medical community to help people just like you who are struggling to make decisions. And we're not talking about the black and white easy decisions, because they're medical decisions black and white most of the time, or they can be gray and opaque and kind of uncertain, just like you mentioned.
Sure.
Okay, so they can be uncertain.
So rarely is a life or death situation so cut and dry.
Exactly. So, and I'll give you an example of cut and dry is if I'm somebody's medical power of attorney, they can't think for themselves, and they break their leg, and the doctor says, hey, Mark, should we put their leg in a cast or let it heal crooked and they'll walk funny for the rest of their life? I mean, obviously, what am I going to do?
Of course.
I'm going to put it in a cast. Now, the extreme of that is end of life, which is called a do not resuscitate or living will, which, again, most medical power of attorneys really, that's what it ends up being for is, end of life kind of treatment. What would you, the doctor comes to me and says, you know what, they've met all these very, very specific conditions. They do not want to be resuscitated. Then in that case, what am I going to do?
Well, you're going to abide by their wishes.
I'm going to abide by their wishes. Cut and dry, sad, difficult, but at the end of the day, at least I know I met.
Hey, it's what they wanted, not what you want.
It's what they wanted, exactly. So what we want to do is help avoid the gray areas, because the gray areas get a little tricky. So some of the gray areas could be something along like it's not end of life, but I get diagnosed with a disease. And the doctor says, you know what, Mark, over the next 3 years or so, you're really going to go straight downhill. You're not going to be able to leave the house. You're going to be bedridden. You're going to have to be transferred, meaning someone's going to have to put you in a wheelchair. You're not going to be able to go to the bathroom by yourself. Not going to be able to fed. You're not bathed. You're going to be just kind of a miserable existence. Yeah. I mean, mentally, I'm still there, so I can still kind of, watch TV and maybe chat with people. I doubt I'll be getting lots of visitors in that day, when you're in that condition. But the bottom line is, I would not be in a good place.
So these are quality of life issues.
These are quality of life issues, exactly. And what happens is now the doctor says to me, you know what, Mark, we have this operation that can make you as good as new. It's going to take some time to rehabilitate, but in 6 months, you're going to feel as good as new versus declining and being miserable over the next 3 years. And he says, and I'm saying, great. Well, where do we get started? And the doctor goes, well, I have some bad news and good news. And I'm going to say, okay, give me the bad news first. The bad news is you have a 50% chance of not making it off the operating table.
Oh,
now, again, I still have, maybe 2-3 years left of life. How hard of a decision would that be for me to make, right? Would it be easy or hard?
No, it's a difficult decision.
It's going to be difficult, right? So if it's going to be difficult for me, how hard would it be for the person who would make that decision for me?
Even harder.
50-50, right? So it would be hard. So if someone's going to be nice enough to be our medical power of attorney, do we want to leave instructions for them to say in that situation?
As clear and concise as possible.
Right. And that's exactly what this Quality of Life Directive does. If you turn the page, you'll see in there, it lists all these different things you may want. And what's interesting is, again, going back to that decision, let's say, now it's hard for me. It could be difficult on my medical power of attorney. Now, what happens if the medical power of attorney says, okay, well, I knew Mark. Mark was a gung-ho kind of guy, and he would go for it. And they decide to do the operation, and I die all of a sudden. Now, what can happen to them?
Oh, my goodness. That's see, this is it. I don't want to leave this kind of responsibility and the aftermath of these important life revolving decisions. I don't want that. I don't want to inflict that on a friend of mine or a loved one.
Yeah, and again, it's such a tough thing, and and then what else happens is there's maybe other family members who are involved. What happens? Does everyone think alike, or does everyone think a little bit differently?
Oh, of course, everybody's different.
Yeah, so let's say the medical power of attorney thinks it's the right thing to do the operation.
Well, he's looking out for the hospital. He's looking out for himself. He's not looking out for you.
Well, he could be looking out for himself, because could he also be saying, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to be taking care of this guy for 3 years. Could that creep into his mind to say, let's either give it a shot, or because I don't want to be burdened with pushing this guy around and cleaning him and bathing him for the next 3 years, or, you know what I'm saying, taking care of him. So let's say they make that decision, though, and I die, mentally. Or what happens to the rest of the family? What are they going to think?
Oh my goodness!
So do you see why it'd be so important at least to just leave instructions? Because
as detail oriented as possible.
Exactly. So if that detail's written down and they go ahead and make the decision, I'm like, hey, look, on a 50-50 chance versus me being bedridden or taking a shot at a better life, go for it. And it's in black and white. Is that going to be a problem?
No,
right?
Not if it's written, documented.
If it's documented, and what we typically, like to say is, instead of leaving this huge burden on folks, I wouldn't, and just like you said at the beginning, I wouldn't wish giving a medical power of attorney to anybody without this Quality of Life Directive on my worst enemy. Why
you know
would I say
what?
that?
The more I'm getting to learn more about this, I wouldn't accept it. I would feel honored. I'd be flattered. But unless this was filled out prior, like in other words, unless they met with you and you gave them this comprehensive checkup, with all of these questions and their answers, I wouldn't want that to burden myself with that kind of responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, would it be fair of me to put that burden on you or on anybody?
No, the individual has to.
Exactly. So, so you basically nailed why it's so necessary to have one of these. And what I'd ask is, what kind of advisor would I be if I wasn't offering this to my clients and making sure they had these things filled out?
Yeah, you'd be poor.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be doing the right, ethically, you wouldn't be doing the right thing.
Yeah, essentially, right? Because, I mean, in and of itself, although has nothing to do with investments, when you take a look at end of life, are you aware, Gary, that where most healthcare is obviously probably one of the most dangerous, most expensive unknowns for people who are retired. But do you know where most of the money actually gets spent is at the end of life? Most of their healthcare expenses in their, retirement.
I can understand
It's end of life. Yeah. So, well, we want to also make sure that we have this filled out so that we can give directions as to what we want, so that this way, they're not just going on into perpetuity and burning through. And you can see in that document, Gary, it'll say, and again, just an idea. Let's backtrack a bit, give people an idea of how quickly things can go gray. So if you look at the first line there, it says, okay, having pain controlled as much as possible. And you can, get to list down how much pain control you'd want. Now, I might say, I'm a baby. If I'm incapacitated, I don't want any pain. Knock me out. All right. And now what happens if someone else, like say my girlfriend, says, well, no, I would rather have some pain if it made sure, because if you look at the next line, it says having pain controlled if it affects my ability to think clearly. So I think everybody would say, hey, knock me out. I don't want any pain. But what happens if it would either hurt your ability to think clearly? Would you accept some pain and be able to think clearly and be able to communicate with people?
Everybody's got a different threshold for what they can tolerate with pain. So.
Exactly. So if we have it written down, can that help avoid that kind of mistake?
Listen, it's better to document everything.
Yeah.
So of course, you got to write it down.
Exactly. And then there's also a line there that says having pain controlled even if it shortens my life.
Folks, you are listening to On the Mark along with Mark Papa. I'm Gary Byron. Mark Papa is with Financial Resources Group out of Glastonbury. You can find him online at www.frplan.com. That's F as in Frank, frplan.com. And write this phone number down, 860-657-8380. These are the kind of questions that are pertinent. These are the questions that he will ask you when you sit down with him. 860-657-8380. And we'll repeat more of that more towards the end of the show.
Thank you. And I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I know this stuff can be a bit morbid, but
but it's essential. Yeah. It might, it's not, I wouldn't even call it morbid. You know what it is? It's uncomfortable. Yeah. Not morbid. These are tough questions, but guess what? They need to be asked.
Yeah, and all we're trying to do is help you and help the next person who needs to make that difficult decision for you. So again, what kind of advisor would I be if I wasn't covering these type of things?
This is why what you do is so essential for people.
Yeah, well, and thank you. And
that's why we have the show.
I appreciate you acknowledging that too. So that said, the Quality of Life Directive, by the way, remember how I said the medical power of attorney gets uploaded to that digital vault and can send it anywhere in the country? We also send it with the Quality of Life Directive. We upload it to the same account. So that this way, you not only does that person have the legal authority to act on your behalf, but they also have your instructions, so that they're going to have those instructions ready for you. So this way, no matter what happens, you're covered. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right, great. So the next topic of conversation I'd like to talk about, we're going to shift gears a little bit. And again, medical is one of the major areas of where, unfortunately, you get a thing called identity theft. But that's one of the fastest growing areas. So identity theft. So everybody talks about identity theft. We hear this a lot. Is this happening more and more or less?
Oh, come on.
We've seen billions of records get hacked. I've already assumed that my identity's been stolen. So
you think so?
I would say
Wouldn't you know, though? Wouldn't they start making charges on your credit card or go crashing in on your Social Security? Or
I think the way I think of it is it just hasn't happened yet, but I'd imagine my stuff is somewhere. I mean, I'm part of Experian, or it was that I don't want to misquote, but one of those major, Equifax, I think it was, who was unfortunately hacked So that was billions of records.
Allegedly.
There was a case where several, so we're seeing hacks. The sophistication of the identity thieves is getting better and better every day. I was reading an article about them using artificial intelligences and mimicking your children's voice. And they could make a strange phone call to you and demand a ransom. And
I've seen that.
There's that. So there's all sorts of different things. And then what we try and get people to do is to stay up to date on their identity theft problem. But having just a monitoring service, Gary, is just not enough. So what we do is we ultimately give everybody what's called the Identity Theft Guide, okay? And it's actually free from the Federal Trade Commission, identitytheft.gov. You can download this yourself, and we think that's probably one of the best resources we can utilize to help our clients protect themselves against identity theft. But ultimately, we want to help prevent identity theft. And right here on the second page of this guide, it actually shows you the three different credit rating agencies: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And all you really need to do is lock down your credit. So we recommend everybody gets a lock on their credit, so that what happens if they report to one, they have to report to the other three. So lock down your credit. So
the other two.
Yeah, the other two, excuse me. Thank you for correcting me. To make sure that they're always, their credit is locked down. So nothing major can go wrong. The next thing we also, right below, it says, review your credit report once a year. And again, if you are someone's financial power of attorney, it would be a good idea, especially someone who's elderly, to double check their credit. There's people coming into their lives. There's nurses. There's all sorts of people that you don't really know or are close with, where it would be a good idea to maybe double check what's going on with them. And that, there was just a case, I think 2 women just got arrested for doing some kind of fraud. It was in the paper yesterday, where they were basically skimming money from one of their clients. Wow. So, the bottom line is we want to make sure, especially when people get in their elder years, that they're covered. So identity theft is absolutely key. So we want to be proactive about this. Another thing we also recommend is for those, some people get this involuntarily. We're coming into tax season now, is to go online and get identity theft PIN for the IRS. There's been cases where people, I think there was like 1,000 tax returns or some craziness number was sent to a home in Michigan. And it's just ridiculous. So what was happening is somebody was got a TurboTax account and they just started filing fraudulent tax returns. They're using people's stolen identity. And actually, this actually happened to me when I first got married. And I looked at my wife's letter. It was a letter that we owed TurboTax $65. I'm like, we never filed through TurboTax, and she's single. She never filed the TurboTax. And we ended up having to call, the Federal Trade Commission. They have you call all these people. And we all got these letters back saying, oh, we don't deal with this. You got to call the police. So, write all these letters. So back in the back, they also have template letters you can get a PDF of this so you can copy and paste at the very back. And they actually have template letters to each and every one of the agencies that you need to talk to, so that you don't have to write the letter yourself, and they can actually act on it.
Did you say you can get this book free? Can you repeat where you found the Federal Trade Commission?
Yeah. It's identitytheft.gov.
And then we just asked them to send you this booklet?
You can have them send a booklet, or we get them in like bulk.
Okay.
Because I go through so many meetings.
So you get it. Okay.
Every single client gets this, and we go through this.
Can I ask you, because I'm running out of time, I got about 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What's the very first thing somebody should do once they discover that they have been a victim of identity theft?
Well, I think the first thing they got to do is, I'm not an expert at this, but I would call the credit rating agencies and pull a credit report. I would definitely get my credit locked down immediately. Because if you did it in advance, that wouldn't happen. But I would get my credit
with your credit card companies, call them down.
You got to call the credit card companies. Oh, you just thankfully reminded me of something major. Take a picture of your wallet, everything in your wallet, and take a copy of it. So all your credit cards, your Medicare card, your healthcare card, all that stuff needs to be, I would recommend everybody put that on a copier or somehow have a copy of every one of those things so they know who to call. And you have an inventory of all that stuff so you know who to call to start cleaning things up. Because otherwise...
That's great advice. You can put all those cards probably in one sheet.
Yep.
And make them 2-3 copies.
Yeah, 2-3 copies. Make sure the phone numbers are available. So if something were to happen, you know who to call right away. You can just start shutting everything down and reporting fraud.
Good stuff. Final minute.
Okay. Yeah, so that's, again, why, why we talk about identity theft. Because, again, time, cost, hassle. And I have real-life examples of people, even when they've tried everything, people who shredded everything, still had to change their email. And also nowadays, you have to change your phone number. Because when we go to log into our accounts nowadays, they're going to say, hey, send me a text message. Or we'll send an email alert. Well, if they've hacked your email and the code's inside your email.
Your phone as well, you're right.
You're exposed. So we'll get these calls and like, oh, make sure no one took money out of our accounts, And again, they all have this guide, but thankfully they know what to do. But even when you are 100% dedicated to protecting yourself, you still get caught off guard. So
I've got to wrap things up, Mark, but I don't know, next week, are we doing a completely different topic or can we continue with identity theft? It seems like such a broad topic of discussion that we only scratched the surface here.
Yeah, no, we can definitely segue and talk a little bit more about it. And again, Gary, what kind of advisor would I be if I wasn't helping my clients protect themselves against identity theft?
Awesome. Folks, if you'd like more information on this topic or any of the others that we discuss on this show, simply head on over to Financial Resources Group website, which is www.frplan.com. That's F as in Frank, rplan.com, frplan.com. If you'd like to schedule a meeting with Mark Papa, very easy to do. Write this phone number down. More importantly, call it 860-657-8380. Again, 860-657-8380. There's a replay of this show on Mark's YouTube channel, which is at Mark Papa, MarkPappa 5207, as well as his website where you can listen to all the shows. For Mark Papa, I'm Gary Byron. Thank you so much for listening to On the Mark. Until next Saturday morning, have a good one, everybody.